Now that I read the book, I don't like the movie anymore. Of course I'm not going to say that, especially if the changes that were made for the film actually work for a movie. Welcome to the series called Behind the Wardrobe, where I will be talking about changes that were made in the film adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Chronicles of Narnia is a book series written by Clive Staples Lewis, also known as C.S. Lewis. The first book that was released is entitled The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Later, in 2005, a film adaptation of this book was made, and it was given the same title. It was directed by Andrew Adamson and produced at Walt Disney Pictures and Walden Media. This film was a success. It grossed at $745 million in theaters. I grew up watching this movie, and I recently read the books and noticed that some scenes that were made only for the film actually made it more enjoyable, and I will tell you why those scenes were necessary. I will be getting into 3 key scenes in the movie, and today I will be analyzing the opening sequence, the Blitz and the evacuation. The scene begins by showing German aircraft flying over London and dropping bombs. We see the Pevensey family sheltering, and then we transition to the train station and the opening credits sequence with the train and shots of the kids. Then, we end with the arrival to Professor Kirk's house. In this scene, we can clearly see the adaptation theory. And you may be wondering, what is this theory? Well, it explores the transformation that narratives undergo when going from one medium to another, in this case, from literature to film. According to John Desmond, it explains that adaptation is not a direct translation of narratives and how they are told, but rather an interpretation of the stories and making creative decisions to write a whole new narrative while maintaining the elements of the original story. Now, this scene does not appear directly in the book. The book starts when they are already at the professor's house, and Lewis wrote, and I quote unquote, "This story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids." In literature, this type of explanation works, especially because the book was published in 1950, so this context allows the audience to understand that they were in World War II. However, in a film adaptation, Andrew decided to dramatize the context of what our protagonists were living and how they came to encounter the wardrobe that would eventually transport them to Narnia. Another important part of the adaptation theory is that a writer needs to stick to the style of the new narrative, and the main thing that differentiates film from literature is how it takes us through a story visually and auditorily, whereas literature is told verbally, allowing the audience to create their own mental image of what they are reading. But there are also different approaches that can be taken when creating a film, and here's where another theory comes in, the formalism theory. According to Jason Hellerman, formalism is an approach that focuses on the aesthetic of the film and giving the audience an immersive sensory experience, allowing us to interpret what we see and hear. For example, the swastika that is briefly seen right here on one of the airplanes and the pilots speaking German among themselves. Those factors let us know that their real-world setting is during World War II. When they are in a train station, their goodbyes to their mother let us know that they will leave London without her. And then we see adults, mainly mothers, standing on a platform and waving goodbye to a train full of children, indicating that all children had to be evacuated and their mothers had to stay behind. Now, the whole train sequence, aside from creating an aesthetic image for the opening credits, its purpose is to show that the children are not thrilled to be on this journey, as we don't see them talking, playing, or even smiling at any point during the ride. Another purpose is to show where the children were evacuated. The shots show mainly the countryside, and once the children get off at their stop, we can see they're not in an urban area anymore. Like I said, we don't see all of this in the book. The point where the book begins is when the 4 siblings are talking after arriving at Professor Kirk's house, which is the equivalent to the scene where Peter is listening to the radio and he and Susan comfort Lucy after she got in bed.
Wars don't last forever, Lucy. We'll be home soon.
Yeah, if home's still there.
Isn't it time you were in bed?
Yes, Mum.
Ed! You saw outside. This place is huge. We can do whatever we want here. Tomorrow's going to be great. Really.
We have heard many times how we don't like the changes that were made when a film adaptation of a book was made, or we have said it ourselves. I know for sure I've said that several times. But an important thing to understand here is that in some cases there will be some details that will need to be added or removed when retelling a story in a medium that's different from the original to allow for better storytelling. And it can sometimes give us some foreshadowing, like when Peter reprimands Edmund for going back into the house to get their father's picture.
Why can't you like anyone but yourself? You're so selfish. You could have got us killed.
Stop it!
And then saying this line.
Why can't you just do as you're told?
Which will come later on in the film, but I will get into that in another video. Remember, I will be talking about some other scenes from The Lion, the Witch, and Her Wardrobe, so make sure you check those out too. So, what do you think? Did you like how Andrew gave us the context in this opening sequence? Would you have preferred if the film started directly at the professor's house? Let me know in the comments and I'll see you next time. Bye!